The Free Enterprise Society was formed over 30 years ago by a group of individuals who were very concerned about the simultaneous expansion of bureaucracy, erosion of individual rights, and plunder of private wealth by slick government debt and taxing schemes. Their mission is to promote free enterprise worldwide and restore lost liberties and freedoms in America under the organic national constitution of the Republic of the United States of America. To further their goals, the Free Enterprise Society arranges training and seminars to educate the people across the country. Attorney Tommy Cryer, who won against the IRS. Longtime Shreveport, Louisiana attorney Tommy K. Cryer is no stranger to conflict and controversy. The Hall of Fame attorney, an honor graduate of LSU Law School and member of the prestigious Order of the Koi, has a reputation for taking on issues no one else would, and on a number of occasions he has made new inroads in the legal world. But now he has thrown down the gauntlet in front of the mother of all 800-pound gorillas, the Internal Revenue Service, and the mama gorilla has picked it up. The only thing certain now is that someone is going to be hurt. The story began over a decade ago when a friend told Cryer that the income tax was a sham. Cryer did not believe a word of it and thought his friend had gone off the deep end. Learning that his friend had decided to stop filing tax returns, Cryer determined to research the matter, show his friend where he was wrong, and keep him from getting into trouble with the IRS. That is how a 2-year research project began, but it did not turn out the way Cryer expected. Sporting a wry grin, Cryer said, "That just goes to show you that no good deed goes unpunished." His research not only included the tax laws themselves, but went past the first income tax in 1861 to the drafting of the Constitution and included reading hundreds of cases, congressional archives, and tax laws from 1913 to present. Cryer learned that although his friend had only a piece of the picture, he was right. The tax code and its regulations are carefully and, he adds, ingeniously crafted to deceive, said Cryer. He explains that the answer is not in what the laws say, but rather in what they do not say, and those provisions that are revealing are either hidden with tons of verbiage or behind double and triple negatives. And, more importantly, he says, he knows why. So Cryer decided he would also stop filing returns and would challenge the IRS if and when it came to call. This resulted in failure to file income tax return charges being filed by the IRS. The jury said, "Not guilty on all counts." Cryer will be speaking on the plan to rid ourselves of the IRS.
All right, got one more speaker before lunch. Some of you have heard him before, but I think he's a very, very important part of certainly the tax movement. He's an attorney out of Louisiana. He's an honor grad from LSU Law University in '73. He has numerous landmark cases behind his name. He's also a member of the Order of the Colt, which is very high prestigious. He's inducted into the LSU Law Hall of Fame. This is not a small-time attorney. He's a very well-known and very well-respected attorney. He's been in politics, working with in the past. He's been in 37 years in law now, appellate. But what I'm most interested in, of course, he's learned about the income tax. He learned that there's nothing making you liable, and this guy stopped filing returns. And the IRS objected to that and took him to court. And he also got a not guilty verdict from a federal jury not too long ago. Please help me welcome attorney Tommy Cryer.
Thanks, Steve. Was scheduled to say good morning. I'm going to say good. Well, I can still say good morning because we're in California, but it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. To me, what I want to do is first off get hold of take care of some housekeeping here. First off, I want to thank Steve for having me over here for this. These events like this are what fills my sails. You know, it's a very frustrating endeavor trying to take on the federal government and its attack monkeys, the IRS. And it gets bloody, and it gets discouraging. And you get to the point sometimes whenever you just don't feel like, you're getting anywhere. And then I hit one of these conferences and I meet people like you. And I get my batteries all charged back up again. And I realize this is doable. We can win this. Because we've got people like you out there fighting the fight. But I also want to caution you. I'm sitting here in the middle, sandwiched in between these wonderful speakers, these orators, and I'm going to caution you that I'm not a speaker. I'm not an orator. I'm just a plain, simple, pot-bellied country lawyer. And over the hill one at that. But I am a talker. So, if you will, I'd like to talk to you about a few things. Things that are important to me and I hope important to you. We know that there are problems. If we didn't know there were problems in this country, you wouldn't be sitting there. And we know that America is in trouble. And we know that as Americans, it's our job to get her out of trouble. It's our job to save it. What I don't believe maybe some people don't understand is being an American is not a nationality. Any more than being a mutt is a breed. We're all nationalities. We're all colors. We're all religions. We are definitely we are a representative cross-section of the world. Being an American is not a nationality, it's a title. Being born in America gives us an opportunity to earn that title. But we've got to earn it every day by standing our ground, by keeping this a place called America, the kind of America our forefathers handed us. The kind of America that started out trying to scratch a subsistence, a survival out of the wilderness, out of the dirt, and 100 years later found itself the most powerful, the most prosperous, and the most generous nation in the world. Why was that? Because we were free to accomplish, free to innovate, free to be ingenious, free to do something different. We were not bound by governments. We were not handcuffed. We were not in chains. And so we excelled. Because we were free to. We were free to keep and reinvest and build our prosperity and our wealth by keeping the fruits of our labor and our ingenuity in our industry. But are we still free like that? Are we still having that benefit? And if we are not, can we continue to excel? Can we continue to be head and shoulders above the best of the world? All the manufacturing is going elsewhere in the world. That's where wealth is generated. We all know that the problems that are causing this loss of freedom, this loss of liberty, are threatening to take our country down the road to socialism and communism and totalitarianism, under whatever you want to call it. Some call it fascism, which is a marriage between big industry or big money and government. Some call it socialism, which is government's ownership of all the assets. I think it's a mixture of the two. I think it's a menage a trois, not just a single unholy marriage, but a menage a trois between big government, big money, and big industry. And we are the ones that they have got cast their eye on us as a slave pool. And that's where we're headed. That's where your children are going to be. So everybody out there has got their eye on a particular problem. We know, and I won't bore you with the misapplication of the income tax and how that's happened. We all know that if there were a law making us liable, that they would have shown it to us by now. We all know that for 30 years we've been demanding that they show us that they cannot. And many of us have come to understand that the reason that there is not is because there could not have been. Because at the time the income tax was done, we still had a Supreme Court. The income tax came into existence in 1913, actually long before that, but the one that we know today started in 1913. But the Supreme Court wasn't really killed until 1935. That was whenever they suffered a splenectomy. What I call a splenectomy that FDR did on him when he threatened to pack the court. And they kowtowed. And they bowed. They knelt. They kissed the ring of the Fed. You know, speaking of the Fed, a lot of us are worried about our phony vegetation-based currency or monetary system where our money is melting, rotting like lettuce in our hands. A lot of us are worried about undeclared wars, where the only winner is a military-industrial complex that Dwight Eisenhower warned us about. Many of us are concerned about our schools being choked down by federal regulations and interference and kibitzing. Our history has been distorted. Our youth has been indoctrinated rather than educated. A few years ago, college seniors, graduating college seniors, I'm not talking about sixth graders. This isn't our leak letter. I'm talking about college seniors who are about to go out and become part of the American fabric. Were asked where the following quote came from. From each according to his means, and to each according to his needs. Karl Marx, I heard somebody say on the front row here. Exactly. But would you believe that 70% of our graduating college seniors thought that that quote came from the United States Constitution? That 70% of our educated have bought into the myth that it's the purpose of our federal government to make everyone equal, to make everyone under the new definition of freedom, free. Federal government has now become a national government. We're concerned about that. States who created the federal government, which is greater, the creator or its creature? Is it just me? The states created the federal government to take care of outside affairs and affairs between the states, not in the states. And yet now the states are conceived, or perceived rather, as being creatures of the federal government. Why? Because the federal government elevated territories to the status of states. That wasn't making them subordinate to the federal government. They didn't create it, they recognized it. What about the Philippines? It was a protectorate. They gave it its freedom. When they made a territory into a state, what they did was they recognized and granted independence to that state. They made it as sovereign as Virginia, as New York, as any of the original 13 independent states were when they created the federal government. But that's not the way things are, is it? Even the word freedom is given a new definition. Freedom has been redefined. Means freedom from having to make our own decisions. Means freedom from being responsible for our own conduct. It means freedom from having to suffer consequences for that conduct. It means freedom from having to rear our own children and teach them what is right, because the government is there to teach them what is correct. And correct is close enough, isn't it? It means freedom from having to take care of our neighbor, because the government's there supposed to do that, isn't it? That's the government's role, isn't it? To be our nanny, to take care of our neighbor. We're not our brother's keeper anymore, are we? When this country was created, people fought for freedom not because they wanted it, but because they had it and they weren't going to turn it loose. They were already self-reliant. They were already independent. They relied on nobody but themselves and what? Each other. Well, now that we no longer rely upon ourselves and each other, we're no longer free. Now, I've known about these problems, and I've seen it. I remember in the 1960s when Khrushchev pounded his shoe on the podium and said, America, we don't have to destroy you because you will destroy yourself from within. And I knew then that he was right unless we changed course. I spent the next better than half of my life at that time working with what I thought was a party designed or dedicated to restoring that republic and changing the course of this country that was headed for disaster when I saw it back then. When I got up into the upper echelons, I was a strategist. I was a consultant. I was chairman for my part of the state of Louisiana for 2.5 to almost 3 years. During that 3 years, I directed 11 campaigns, 11 of many that I did over my 25 years in the trenches. I thought I was doing good. I won all 11. When I left office, I was 11-0. 5 of those were against incumbents. I was doing good. But when I started rubbing shoulders of the upper echelons of the party, and I started leading the party leadership, and that's when I realized that the Republican Party that I fought with, and I waded in through the mud and the blood and the other body fluids and emissions in the trenches of politics, we're all fighting for what I was. Everybody in the leadership, everybody inside the Beltway were all Democrats. They had no intention that the Republican Party and the Democrat Party are nothing but the right and left leg of the same pair of breeches. The I'm in and you're out party. I quit. And about that time, when I had nothing left to do. Now, by the way, when I quit, I walked out, but I didn't walk out with my hands empty. I walked out with all of my toolbox, my little political toolbox. And I walked out with my bag of tricks. And those same tools and those same tricks work against tyranny just as well as they serve tyranny when I thought that I was trying to make us free. I've still got my tools. When I found out about the IRS's misapplication of the income tax, I was pretty much on my own. I discovered this from a former law partner who I had set out to save from himself by showing him the law that makes him liable and therefore required to file returns. I didn't want his tail on a crack, but what ended up, whose tail ended up in the crack? Yeah, no good deed goes unpunished, does it? And I thought I was pretty much alone in the world on that. I didn't know anything about movements. I didn't know anything about it. All I knew was what I discovered. And I spent 2 years researching on my own to learn how, why. Why did they do it? Why don't they just pass the bill? It took me a lot of my spare time learning about those things. But when I was indicted, and the word got out that I was indicted, I started hearing about all these other groups. And I started finding out about them. Groups like Freedom Law School, groups like Free Enterprise Society, groups like We the People, groups like Save a Patriot Fellowship, and a whole lot of other groups. I found out there's a whole community of people out there that know about this. Isn't this wonderful? The only problem was that I was shocked when I looked at them, and this is what I saw, folks. This is what I saw. I'm going to spare you the finger story. How many of you have heard the finger story? Okay, one over here. Fingers are easily broken. But that's what I found. All of these groups pulling in different directions, competing with each other, sometimes biting each other in the back, sometimes fighting among themselves. And I'm sitting here saying, there's no way to run an army. And I said, look, you guys have got to get it together. And they all said, hey, let's get together and meet and tell us about it. So I found out 2 days before the meeting that I was supposed to be presenting a plan. What? So I pulled it all nighter. I wrote a 90-page book entitled Truth Attack. It was just the name I gave it. Because, it's the truth that's going to make this clear. If the public knew the truth, they would no longer believe the lie. And we attack. We've got to go on the offensive. We can't keep defending ourselves forward. When you defend yourself, the only question is, how much ground are you going to lose? Best you can do is nothing. We've got to go on the attack. Everybody, I met with leaders that came here from all over the country in March of 07, leaders of the tax honesty movement. many of which you see here today. And all of them liked it. All of them liked the idea. And I said, okay, well, one of you is going to have to take the lead. You know, I'm not a leader. I'm one guy. I don't have an organization. I'm not one of this coalition. It's all you guys. You got to pick a leader to set this thing off and make it happen. Nobody wanted to be the leader. Well, about that time I get a phone call. Your trial's been put off for 3 months. Well, now what? You know, idle hands are the workshop of the devil. And, what else did I have to do? So I kicked it off. A no good deed goes unpunished again. Now, some of the original group that was there that liked it bowed out. One didn't want to expose his members to other groups. He thought he might lose some members to somebody else. This is the kind of attitude in the movement that's killing us, folks. Another would only join and support the coalition if I were to be smart enough to tell all of the members of all the other groups that they shouldn't be belonging to those groups, they should be belonging to his, because he had the only smart way to deal with the problem. I'm not going to do that. We dropped him. By the way, Mr. Smarty Pants is in prison right now. Now, none of the people in this coalition, like Paymon, where is Paymon? I don't want to talk about it behind his back, joke about it behind his back. But, you know, everybody else jumped on. And we ended up with a coalition started out with Joe Bannister's Freedom Above Fortune. Steve Hempling's Free Enterprise Society. As a matter of fact, the first person to sign up when the Truth Attack website opened up, first member, the #1 member is Steve Hempling. And Steve has been a total 100% supporter and backer, and he's been a team player since day one, and he still is today. But the coalition's grown. We've also come to take on groups from across the freedom movement span. We've got a lot of Ron Paul groups that have signed on. We've got Granny Warriors, which is a local rural group and a very active group, signed on. Liberty Works Radio is on. JPFO is on. APC is on. We've got a lot of organizations, Constitution Party state coordinators that have committed their state organization to support the Truth Attack approach. So what we've now done, we've taken this and we've formed a fist. Yeah. Right? Now you can do something without breaking your fingers, right? So what are we going to do with it now? We got it. We got the fist. How are we going to handle this?
Hit them hard.
That's it. Hit them hard. Well, one of the things that we do know from past experience is that we're not going to whine and we're not going to wish the problem away. We've been wishing and whining for years and we've gotten nowhere except farther back, farther back, farther back. It's going to take an offensive measure. Now, Matt Shea may not be here today, but I want some of you to verify. He's going to be here for the day's out. He's a Washington legislator, Washington State, and a fantastic guy, and you're going to love him. But he complained about a talk I gave in Valley Forge, along with Steve Heffley and Lori, that I had not told a pig story. Well, so I'm up for Matt Shea, and you guys verify for him. Tell him I told a pig story. I grew up on a farm. We raised, or we caught, or chased down and killed just about everything we ate. Okay, we grew it. We did our own milk, our own butter, our own eggs. We butchered our own meat, pork, beef, rabbit, fowl. And every few months we'd take 2 pigs to the slaughterhouse. Now, the way that you manage a pig is pretty hard to hold on to. They're pretty strong. Especially when they get up to be about 200, 250 pounds, 300. And they're hard as a rock. They look like they're pudgy like me, real soft and cuddly, you know. But they're not. They're hard as a rock, like that. You can't grab them. So how do you get that pig in the trailer? You have to get him by the hind legs, And when you do that, if any of you ever been around a pig when he got grabbed, they squeal high heaven, don't they? I mean, they make the most god-awful rackets you ever heard, don't they? And he's screaming the bloody murder, and you've got him on hind legs, and you lead him like a wheelbarrow, because he's not going to fall on his face, and you just roll that wheelbarrow, pig wheelbarrow, right up on the trailer. Now, when he gets on that trailer, he becomes sausage. Right? Now, what should that pig have been doing? All the racket that we can make at protests, all of the noise that we can make, all the squealing we can do hasn't changed anything. 1.7 billion people went to Washington last September. Didn't change a thing, did it? The Obama death care plan still passed. And they're still going to start offering us. How old did you say you were? Oh, you like Kool-Aid. What's your favorite flavor? All right? We're going to have to do better than that pig. That was a lot of racket and didn't change. We're going to have to go on the offense. We're going to have to do something. It's going to take action. Now, here's the problem. You know the government's unified. You know that we're fragmented. Now, we formed ourselves into a fist. But this is a huge problem, folks. It's across the board. It's like trying to swallow a pill, isn't it? So what do you do when you've got something big like that? Like you eat an elephant. How do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
One spoonful at a time. That's right. So what do? We were like this. They're like this. Now we form this object here. Break them up into little pieces. Bite-sized pieces. So where did we start with a bite? At that point, Truth Attack changed its subtitle to putting the government back in its box, one tentacle at a time. And one gentleman emailed me after that, and he said, Mr. Cryer, he said, I don't want to sound critical or anything, but I want to let you know you misspelled testicle on the website. And I wrote him back and I said, no, sir, I said, there's a lot more than two of them. They're tentacles. So what's the first tentacle? Well, Truth Attack believes the first tentacle that we need to tackle is the Internal Revenue Service. We have to destroy, get the Internal Revenue Service out of America's pockets. We've got to get them away from Americans. Now, why does I believe that that's got to be first? The IRS is the federal government's only hold on the people. They really don't have anything over us. You know, they got their Secret Service, they got their FBI and whatnot, but what do they have to do with us? Nothing. But the IRS does. That's their key to our front door. That's their key to our bank accounts. That's their key to keeping us afraid. The income tax is not only a drain on our wealth, it's a drain on our rights and our liberty. It has absolutely no respect for our rights. It has absolutely no respect for our freedom. And it even absolutely knows it's getting less every day. Getting rid of the income tax is going to free up our states. Look at what it's doing to our states now. Imagine if you were to be dragged off to the blood bank every Friday and they took a pint of blood. First Friday or two, you might not be too bad, but after a few Fridays, they're going to have to carry you down there, aren't they? Well, isn't that what's happening to our state economies every week, every month, every payday? 25% of the gross domestic product of any economy being dragged off the top, taken out of play, hauled off, and taken off the field of the economy. It's got to make every economy anemic. Imagine what would happen if that money stayed here in play. What would happen to the state economy? What would happen to state revenues? What would happen to state taxes? Taxes could go down. What would happen to the federal government having to be a source of funding for the states? Oh, the federal government wouldn't like that, would they? They like having those streams going out into the states everywhere, don't they? Well, isn't it high time that the states found their hind legs? But they could do it if they could afford to. But right now, they got to beg some of their money back. And they have to take the streams that come with it. Getting rid of the income tax will restore our economy, eliminate unemployment almost overnight. Because when people can afford to buy things and buy services, somebody has to make those things. Somebody has to provide those services. Right now, unemployment is still 20% after a year and a half of trying to fix it. right? And it gets worse every month. Most of all, getting rid of the IRS will take the Federal Reserve's attack monkeys away and allow more Americans to find the courage to stand up to the government. Look at you here. All right, you're a group of people who have the courage to stand up to the government. For every one of you, there are thousands of them who don't have the courage that you have. Thousands of them that are afraid to go out and earn the title of American. Now, we can't make them more courageous, but we can sure eliminate what they're afraid of. And what are they afraid of? Internal Revenue Service. 2 people on my jury voted to convict, even though they had just agreed that I was innocent. Why? Well, if we acquit this guy, what do they do to us? 2 people on my jury were willing to see a man go off to prison, his life ruined, just because of their fear. The second bully that we have to take, and I'll tell you, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about with the truth attack concept. Truth attack concept is not just to fragment them, but to take them on one at a time. And to give you an idea how that concept works, I'm going to give you 2 scenarios. 1 for those who are more peacefully oriented, and 2 for those who, like me, are less peacefully oriented. We'll do mine first, okay? Imagine a school ground is being dominated and terrorized by a gang of bullies. Now, the little kids can't get up against a gang of bullies. They get creamed up. You know, the kids do that. But what if those little kids would single one bully out, catch him off to himself, all gang up on him, drag him down, beat the pea water out of him, inject a little bit of attitude change, run him off of the school ground. Now, what would the other kids do who saw that happening? Are they going to say, "Oh my goodness, that was so politically incorrect"? "Oh my goodness, I'm shocked by the violence"? Are they going to say, "Hey, that looked like fun, let's go find another one"? And we single them out. And we gang up on them, and we work and play and fight together. We win. Now, another example. Now, this is for the more peaceful-loving of the bunch. Imagine a beautiful, peaceful valley. Call it Liberty Valley. The man who shot Liberty Valley. No, that was something else. Liberty Valley. And there are these Liberty farms all over. You got a Second Amendment farm over here. You got the First Amendment farm over here. And in that one, there's several farms on the First Amendment. There's a religious freedom farm. There's a free press farm. There's a freedom of association farm. And all these farms around, Fourth Amendment privacy farms. You know, these farms they're nurturing and guarding our liberties. The only problem is that none of them has a barn. None of those liberties can be secured from predators like the federal government. None of them is safe. They're all out in the open. They're all exposed. They're all vulnerable. Now why? Because none of the farmers have figured out how to hold up both ends of a board at the same time. And so they can't build a barn. What's the obvious solution? Good old-fashioned barn raising, right? They all gang up on the problem. And they show up at Joe's farm over there and they build a barn. And they secure a Second Amendment freedom. And they go over there, next week they go over and they build a barn and they secure our religious freedom. Which includes the freedom of the states to establish a religion, by the way. That was reserved. Now, once we get the IRS out of the way, we get the attack monkeys out, the Federal Reserve is the wicked witch, that has to be number 2, because that's the source of the problems. We can't go after the Federal Reserve with the attack monkeys there because people are afraid to stand up with us. But once we get rid of the winged attack monkeys, the IRS, then people will stand up and they'll say, "Hey, no, I want real money. I'm learning that you lied." How much easier will it be to tell people that the government lied when they find out that they lied to them for 100 years about the income tax? The third bully, we got to restore sound money, because that's the destruction of the nation, it's the destruction of our economy. it's going to melt down. Third bully is the Department of Education. Why? Because the minds of our children are the future of this nation. The fact that they have been indoctrinated into believing that the federal government is doing what it was intended to do, that it's supposed to be our nanny, is our destruction. It's what allows it to happen. Then, after that Department of Education is repealed, and we reclaim control of our children's minds, and we reclaim control of how and why they're educated, and we secure our own wealth through the destruction of the Federal Reserve and restoration of sound constitutional money. Then we can move on to the other alphabet soup. Then, by that time of agencies, we can go after the Department of Agriculture. Anybody know what the agriculture clause is in the Constitution? Well, the Department of Agriculture has been driving farmers off the farms for years now. ConAgra, other big companies now control our food supply. It's up in there in the holy marriage, isn't it? Why not have the federal government next cede all parks and national forests to the states in which they're located? Yeah. Abolish the BLM. Anybody ever had dealings with a Bureau of Land Management? Talking about a tyrant?
Yes, sir.
Abolish the, I got it, the TSA. Yeah. But do we need somebody out there insulting us and making us stand in lines like cattle? Because I start feeling like the pig when I'm standing in that line. I'm starting to feel like the pig, and I'm feeling like I want to do something a lot more than squeal about it. I'm out there going, and they don't like it. They don't like it. But wouldn't it save us billions of dollars if we just shoved a 40-millimeter Glock, fully loaded, in the back of every airline seat? The reason that we haven't had any hijacking since 2001 is that no hijacker can possibly believe that any group of passengers is going to let him get away with it. He knows that they're going to overwhelm him and beat him to death with laptops. Right? So, we don't need that. That's all of that is just to get us conditioned to go where we're told and to be ready when the cattle cars come to walk up the ramp without having to be forced. They're going to have to force me. No, they're going to have to do more than that. They're going to have to throw my dead body up on that cattle car because I'm not going on there. I'm not going to be the pig. I'm not going to squeal. I'm going to kick. I'm going to roll over. I'm going to fight. I'm going to bite. And I'm not going on that cattle car alive. I'm an American. Now, by the time we get this far down on the truth attack plan, there'll be no current incumbents left in Congress. Ron Paul will be in the White House. And we'll be cleaning the house with a vengeance, taking on 3 and 4 of these agencies that we don't need and the Constitution doesn't allow. 56% of the federal budget is spent on departments, not activities, departments. 56% is spent on departments for which you can find absolutely no basis in the Constitution.
Department of Energy.
That's one of them. Where's the energy clause? Now, you stop and think about this. It kind of gets you going, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Isn't that exciting? You can actually see that far down the line if we all work and fight together. Just thinking like that, who needs Viagra? So how do we take care of the first bully? I can't get into the details with the time that we have today, obviously. But I can tell you that Truth Tech has a detailed plan to do just that, to take the IRS out, to expose the federal government's lie, to evaporate the lies and myths that allow it to deceive Americans into imposing all this pain, all this suffering, all this self-deprivation upon themselves. Ron Paul has seen the plan, by the way, and the details of it. His comment was, this is what we should have been doing all along. This is way overdue. He says, let's do it. He said, whatever you do, Tom, do it. Make it happen. Now, the has to be on three fronts. The IRS has a number of sides. One side is the legal side. Now, on the legal side, that's Fulton courtrooms. And courtrooms are their home field. They own the courtroom, they own the building, they own the judge.
They own the judge.
They own the appellate courts. They own the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court for 40 years has refused to accept a case on any of these issues because they know that they can't overturn scores of Supreme Court cases, and it's the only way they can justify the tax. But, we've got the legal side. I figure it this way. You don't want people getting hurt because that's the part of the IRS that has the fangs and the talons. They can hurt you on the legal side. So I don't want to have any people get injured. I don't want people hurt. So instead of people, we're going to use lawyers. Well, they're doing it in science labs. They're starting to use lawyers because some people were starting to get attached to the mice. And they knew that nobody would get attached to a lawyer. And the other reason is that there are some things rats just won't do. But right now, I have a bar journal ad that we want to put in bar journals across the country that are going to inform lawyers that, hey, you can get a $100,000 reward from Freedom Law School just by showing up with a statute that makes American workers liable for the income tax.
There is no.
That's a beautiful act. It spells it out. And lawyers recognize, they know strict construction when you say it. I have to sit here and explain it to most folks. But when I say that to a lawyer, he knows exactly what I'm talking about. And he knows there's no such thing as an inferred or implied tax. And he knows there's no such thing as an inferred or implied or intended liability for a tax. And he knows there's got to be a statute or something big is wrong. And he knows from the end there must not be a statute. But here we are saying $100,000 right there at the top. Now, is it ethical? Is it even moral to bait lawyers with money? I don't care. Now, the only problem with this ad is it's not in bar journals now because we don't have the money to pay for them in there. But it's loaded and locked. It's in the tube. Joe Bannister, is Joe here? Yeah, there he is. Joe Bannister recently has already cut a DVD making an appeal to his former colleagues to do their own investigation, to find out for themselves whether their souls are in jeopardy for violating, unwittingly, their oath. I don't know who people swear to today. Used to, we swore to God. I think now Lord only knows who they swear to now, but I don't think it's to God because they certainly don't seem afraid to violate an oath. But he has made a very powerful appeal. He's already taped it. All it's waiting for is funding so that we can have it edited, produced, and get it distributed to every Internal Revenue Service agent in the country that we can get it to. Wow. So it was lowered and locked. In 3 weeks, Joe Bannister is going to be flying to Shreveport, my hometown, or my current hometown for the last 37 years, along with Larry B. Kraft, Peter Gibbons, John Green, all attorneys. In addition to that, there are the 3 attorneys, counting myself, there at Shreveport. We're going to use a courtroom, a very prestigious, traditional-looking courtroom. It's a beautiful room. And we're going to all tape a presentation that explains that what the government sees as a group of tax protesters consists of 2 groups. One is a tinfoil hat brigade that's looking for any excuse to not pay taxes. But the other is a tax honesty movement, you people. And that you believe that you are not violating the law. You believe that you're standing up for the law. You believe that your motives and your intention are the same as theirs. And that you have good reasons for believing that. And here are some of the reasons. Take a look at why they believe that there's no liability on their part, and why they believe that because they're not liable, they're not required by the law that tells us who is required to file income tax returns. They're not required to file. This is why they believe it. If there are reasons for them to believe it, then their belief is what?
Valid.
Reasonable. Now, you may agree with them, you may disagree with them, but you've got to hand it to them. They're not guilty of a crime. And although we realize that you're tied up and you're preoccupied with prosecuting guilty people, that it's real easy, and so that's why we're here to remind you, that your number one job is not to prosecute the guilty. Your number one duty is to protect the innocent. And if all these innocent people are getting caught up in the Internal Revenue Service's nets, and it's your job to call them out. That's what you're here for. And we're here to help you figure out which one is which. We're also going to include a CD with that that has all the authorities for all of the issues, not just the liability issue, but the issue on what is and isn't income. And we're going to have all these with every folder all broken down real neat so a sixth grader can figure it out, and put a synopsis in each folder saying, read this first. This is what it is, and now verify it. And we're going to encourage them to do their own investigation, just like Joe was encouraging them. The political Muck Awards.
Pretty close.
Okay.
Nobody's singing on you.
All right. Well, yeah, I may be dragging into your lunch hour, little folks. Can I have about 4 minutes of your lunch? What is no, I just want a few. Now, on the political side and the social side, we got a lot of great stuff that we're doing. As much as the bar knows that this is law, judges can't stand up there and pretend that it isn't. They can't get away with it because they know everybody knows. They can't, a thief doesn't steal when people are watching. I can take something and pick it up and carry it off if you think I own it. But once you know I don't own it, I better keep my hands off of it, right? So on the social and political fronts, we've got the Muck Awards. Can't get into that because I am cramming this in real tight on time. But the Muck Awards is where we are going to single out 4 incumbents. And we're going to focus the entire freedom movement on getting those 4 incumbents out. Yeah. And we're calling it the America's Most Unwanted Congressman Award. And we're going to give it to them. Yeah. And the old concept is that we can't take out 435 because we're not big enough yet. But to frighten 100 monkeys, you only need to kill 1 chicken. Well, we're going to take out 4 monkeys. You think that isn't going to scare them? And once we do that, we're going to send a notice to all the rest of them. Remember we told you we were taking these guys out? Well, they're not coming back in January. And guess what, though? Don't feel left out because you're on the short list for next year's awards. Unless you want to know how to get off the short list. Now, social. What if flyers? What if the income tax wasn't there? What would it do for us? What would it do for the government? Even the federal government would end up with more money without the federal income tax because the other 80 taxes would be making a boxcar load of more money. Word of mouth, Operation Stop Thief. How many people have heard of Operation Stop Thief? We get out in front of post offices every year and we've handed out over 2 million flyers to people telling them the truth. This is the way you get it started. You start it a little trickle, and a little trickle cuts a notch, and a little trickle gets bigger, and the dam starts to crack. They cracked our constitutional dam, we can crack their tyranny. General public is waiting to learn. Now, Steve Hempling and I have done these Truth Attack mini-sims across the country. How many of you belong to some local group in your area, Tea Party group, Constitution Study group, Activity group. How many of you think that organization wants to be bigger? How many of you think that it would like to raise some funds? Truth Attack puts on these one-day mini-sims, and I don't just hit the high points like I'm doing today. I go into it in detail, and I show you the full plan. And whenever we do that, we don't charge a penny. I don't charge a thing for doing that. All I want is my airfare and my lodging. And I don't even require hookers, nothing. I'm not a politician, not anymore. I've changed. Now, so what do we got here? We got people. It's going to take two things. We got the recipe. We know how to do it. We know how to make the cake. We got to find the ingredients. The ingredients are people and money. We got people. Here you are. And I see you starting to squirm now. Because you know what I'm fixing to say next is money. All right, well, I'm not going to ask you for any money today. I'm not going to pass a hat. How's that make you feel better? But, you've all heard that, there's strength in numbers. Between you and the people who are watching this online, we've got well over 100 people represented today. If every one of those put up $20 and then got us free, would that be $20 well spent?
Yes.
Everybody agree with that? Would that be a bargain?
Yeah.
Freedom's never been free, but it's never been this cheap before, has it? Usually costs blood. Well, $20 a month, automatic payment, painless. That'd be $2,000. 12 months, $24,000. Do you have any idea what I can do, what Truth Attack can do with $24,000 that we don't have today? We can get those DVDs launched fast. We can get those ads posted fast. We can start waking up the bar fast. We can start shaking up the judges fast. We can start making things happen. $24,000 is more, it's bigger than some of the campaign budgets that I ran. And we won with less than $24,000. I can squeeze a penny so hard when it comes to political action like this that blood comes out of the wound in the back of Abraham Lincoln's head. But I'm not asking you for anything today. You've heard all the expression that if you give a man a fish, you fed him for the day. You teach him how to fish, you fed him for life. Well, I'm not asking you to give me a fish. And I'm not asking you to teach me how to fish. I know how to fish. Remember, I still have my tools. What I'm asking you to do is to climb on board this trawler and help me fish. Help me fish for the hearts and minds of our fellow Americans to find the courage to do what you do. Help me fish for honest and decent-minded public servants who find their conscience after finding the truth. Help me fish for a bar of attorneys that know the truth and won't tolerate a court ignoring it. Help me fish for a future for our children and grandchildren where they don't have to choose between either bloody rebellion on one hand or slavery on the other, because that's the legacy we're leaving them. Which of your grandchildren would you have fight your battle for you, earn your title as American? Which of your sons would you have suffer your wounds? What sacrifice is too great to prevent that? What price is too great to pay? What will be the price if we do not? This is a war we can't afford to lose. So what I'm asking you to do is when you get home, get online, go to truthattack.org, sign up as a member like Steve Hempley. There won't be any more, there's just one number one. Click donate and set up a monthly contribution. It doesn't have to be $20, $10. It doesn't have to be $20, it can be $100. Okay. Give till it hurts. and then give a little more. Because if we don't do this, it's going to hurt way more than you can imagine. And we're going to be looking down at our grandchildren, and we're not going to be happy. If you'll do that, if you'll make a pledge to me to join with all of us, not with me, but with Truth Attack and all of its organizations that you're seeing here today, then show me your hind legs and get up and take a stand with me right here today.
Right here.
When you make that pledge, when you say that, how many are you going to stand with us together? Stand with us together. Now, folks, before you sit back down, I want to thank you because I made a $5 bet with Steve Hempling that I was going to get a standing ovation. And I'm donating that $5 to Truth Attack. Folks, all I can say is normally I say here, God bless you, each and every one. I'm not going to say that. You're already blessed. You were born with an opportunity to earn the title of American. And that's a blessing. You were born with the faculties and the knowledge and the wisdom to bring you here today. That's a blessing. What I'm going to do is just say thank God for each and every one of you. Thank God. Thank you.
Thank you.